Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a look at Saskatchewan's COVID-19 numbers. There are 141 new cases of COVID-19. The Northwest has 19 new cases. 12 of those are in the immediate Lloydminster area, where we have 95 active cases. There are 1,786 active cases in the province. 134 people are in hospital, including 6 in the Northwest. More than 615,000 vaccine doses have been administered in the province, with close to 41,000 in the Northwest. An update on a story we first brought you last week: a temporary outdoor patio program has been approved by Lloydminster City Council. The goal of the program is to speed up and lower the cost of the permitting process. The city's Economic Recovery Task Force identified that local restaurants could benefit from this program as a way to increase overall capacity while staying in line with COVID-19 regulations.
This will work with the businesses, especially in the downtown core, to give them an opportunity to possibly tilt their business a little different and attract people.
Businesses who are taking part in the program would still have to submit information to the city, such as a site plan and landowner's approval, as part of the application process. The application fee has been reduced from $75 to $25, and the approval wait time would go from multiple weeks to potentially 5 days.
We don't want people out of taking up the entire sidewalk, but can we make adjustments and can we make things work? And I think the administration has showed they can and respond to that accordingly. Because if it had been 6 weeks, half the summer may be gone, but in 5 working days, and with people hopefully having some advance notice through the GPC meeting that this was available, they would have started to make those contacts with the city and work their way through the application process.
While this temporary program is specific to COVID-19, the opportunity for renewal or extension in the fall and winter is available should a business need it. The Lloydminster Hospital will soon be getting additional support for those with kidney disease. 6 new kidney dialysis stations will be in the hospital to provide services up to 24 patients, where as of now the hospital can provide dialysis to 20. The project is part of the $40 million commitment over 3 years for rural health revitalized programs. The units are expected to be moved to the Prairie North Health Plaza to ensure more people get treated.
That was a bit of an excitement part of it, is to get it out of the hospital off on its own merit in a more widely spaced thing that would help just with the overall comfort and healthiness of having this procedures.
Rosewell says having these new machines closer for some patients who would normally have to travel out of town will make a big difference with these new additions.
So, and I've had phone calls from people that are traveling to Vickerville or North Battleford or Saskatoon or Edmonton because there's just no room. So this hopefully helps some of those people out. It's just it's really good, and it's more than double the money that we originally kind of thought.
The project is expected to begin within the next few months. In this week's Beyond the Classroom, we take a look at a local school that has been awarded with a grant from MusicCounts to go towards new instruments for their music program.
I'm joined here now with Caitlin Jardine, and she is a teacher at Bishop Lloyd School. Now, MusicCounts has donated $1 million worth of instruments and more to schools across Canada, including at Bishop Lloyd Middle School. So could you give some background into the process of applying for this grant?
This process was actually pretty long. It was a pretty big application. It started with essentially describing the school and what we wanted from them, how much money, and then of course what we were going to use the funding for. So they were looking at what's the vision of the program, why do your students need it, and of course for our school that was pretty simple because we're so unique being, in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan and Alberta. There's so many things that we could talk about there.
So what was your reaction when you found out that you did win this grant?
I was shocked. I remember falling off my chair, and I think it left a little bit of a bruise because I just was not expecting it. So I got a phone call in between my teaching, and they basically said, hey, these are the best phone calls that we ever get to make, and you got this much money, and we're really thrilled to start working with your school. So it was very exciting.
And what will the school be putting the money towards?
It is going to go towards a whole bunch of technology and MIDI instruments, so electronic keyboards, DJ pads. Essentially, what I was hearing from the students was we have an awesome program that's traditional band, but they wanted to expand that a little bit more. So reaching out to Music Counts to get the funding, to get a program rolling was really exciting. And of course, the students were very behind the process.
And like you said, you have more programs for the more traditional instruments. So what did it mean to you to maybe see you moving forward and introducing your students to new skills?
Sure. So music is embedded in the world around us in so many different ways. My students, they go out into the world and they're always listening to music on their iPads or their phones. And there is that underlying question, well, how do these people make the music that they do? So for them, it just seemed like a very natural fit to start integrating technology and how these artists that make music actually make them in the real world.
And how big of a difference will this make for current students at Bishop Lloyd and students to come?
I think it'll make quite a big difference because, of course, there's some students who love music, but playing an actual instrument is not their thing. So I'm hoping that by over time creating more and more opportunities for engaging in music making, it'll just invite other students in that might not always pick up a traditional wind instrument and say, hey, I love DJing or I love composing. Let's learn how that process works.
Thank you so much for your time today, Caitlin.
Beyond the Classroom is brought to you by Lakeland College, home to the most hands-on education in Canada. Apply today and graduate job ready.
Now our Connor Chan will take a first look at your weather forecast.
All right, thanks very much, Jasmine. We did have crazy weather yesterday between that 5 and 5:30 mark, and it definitely lasted only probably about 20 minutes. We did see a little bit of that rain continuing overnight, not like some parts of Alberta that saw lots of snow overnight, and even parts we are going to start to see that in the next couple of days, mainly in the southern parts of Saskatchewan. Take a look right now, 2 degrees. We did wake up to a very brisk, cooler morning today. Winds coming up, picking up at north and northwest at 20 kilometers an hour. As we look ahead, we see lots of single digits here today, as it has been pretty cool all across the prairies here. 4 degrees in Vermilion, Vegreville, and Edmonton. 1 up in Cold Lake today. 5 degrees in North Battleford, with 10 in Macklin, 3 degrees in St. Walburg, and 1 degree out in Meadow Lake. Now, as we take a look here to the satellite radar map, mostly cloud coverage is going to hover over our immediate area for the most part. It's going to be those parts down in southern Alberta around that Calgary area, and also going in towards Swift Current and Saskatoon areas that are going to see that more rain and snow over those next couple of days heading into the long weekend, where we could see areas getting the snow, maybe up to 10 centimeters of snow. But for the most part here in Lloydminster, we are going to be pretty dry and not seeing any of that rain or snow over the long weekend. Take a look in North Battleford, -6. The temperature will drop overnight to that. 7 degrees for tomorrow as that cloud coverage does continue on. Looking at Cold Lake, -7 overnight, with 8 degrees for tomorrow for the daytime high. And then for us here in Lloydminster, we are going to see -7 continuing on that trend of minus temperatures overnight. So 6 degrees will be our daytime high for tomorrow with that same cloud coverage. We're going to see that a little bit for tomorrow. Then, of course, it will clear up a little bit for Friday as we get ready for that long weekend. So 11 with some sun and cloud mixes in the forecast there. And then 17 degrees expected for Saturday with clear skies and sun expected, with that wind chill still feeling a little bit more like -3, as we are going to still have a little bit of a chilly overnight with that low of -5. That is a look at your weather forecast for now. We'll have more primetime local news after the break.
Welcome back. A podcast has been started in the border city with the focus of oil and gas, and the hosts are hoping the topics aren't too crude.
Tracy Klotz and Kurt Price have started the podcast called Patchwork. Klotz has been involved with the oil and gas industry for over 40 years, and he's hoping his expertise will draw people to the show.
I'm very close to the oil and gas industry on what's happening with oil and gas prices and what other people are doing, what are oil companies doing, what inventions are coming out onto the market. And so I said to Kurt, why don't we just start doing our own Facebook Live podcast? And so that was the way that the podcast got started.
They are hoping to attract listeners who are in the oil and gas industry and want to stay informed, but also invite new listeners who want to learn more about the industry.
We really just want to tell people, hey, come have a listen and get an actual insight from people who have been in the industry for a very long time, not just from afar, and find out what are we having to say about the oil and gas industry.
Patchwork also has a number of interviews with professionals in the oil and gas industry. They've also featured local guests and ones from around Canada.
Tim McMillan, who was our MLA for the Sask Party of Saskatchewan here in Lloydminster, and did a tremendous job in this area, then retired from that job and took a position as the president of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, CAP, C-A-P-P.
Monthly episodes of Patchwork are streamed on the new Lloydminster Nissan's Facebook page.
Now here are your stock market prices for today.
Today's oil prices are brought to you by First General Services.
Last August, Colin Morikawa won his first PGA major at the 2020 PGA Championship. Now he'll have to defend his title on one of the most difficult courses out there. Evan Kenny has more ahead of the weekend.
Well, this Thursday, the 103rd PGA Championship will take place on the Ocean Course at Kiowa. And this course will be the longest PGA Championship or major played, playing at 7,876 yards. Joining me today to break down the PGA Championship is Marty Wheaton from Wheaton Golf Services. Marty, thanks for taking this time. Now, first things first, this course is so long. How will that affect the field this weekend?
I know the golf course probably won't play that long just with it being so hard and fast, but definitely one of the hardest, if not the hardest golf course on the planet. I think it's going to eliminate a lot of the field that don't necessarily hit it that long. You're just going to be behind the 8-ball if you're not hitting the long ball. And I'm looking at Gary Woodland this week as one of my picks, a strong player in tough conditions, a former U.S. Open champion, and also a long ball hitter for sure.
And not only is it a long course, it's also going to be a windy one here. Now, guys like Bryson DeChambeau, who can nail it, you know, he's not always the most accurate guy when it comes to hitting fairways. How do you think the wind will affect someone like him?
Yeah, for sure. If the wind blows there, it's going to make it a extremely difficult golf course. It looked like the forecast was pretty good, I think, which is encouraging to a lot of the players that don't bomb it off the tee. Certainly in windy conditions, you have to control your ball. And I think Bryson's more than capable of doing it. We'll just see how he plays this week.
Now, Marty, there's a lot of different storylines coming into this weekend. I mean, you know, you look back at 2012, this is where Rory McIlroy really exploded for his career. And as well, you know, another storyline, one that I personally like a little more, Jordan Spieth is going for his career Grand Slam. For a guy like Jordan Spieth, do you think this is possible this weekend?
Well, he's certainly trending in the right direction. It seems like almost every week you see Jordan Spieth near the top of the leaderboard like he used to. And I think with closing the deal here recently as well, that his chances are just as good, if not better, than anybody else in the field.
And with that win, like we already mentioned, I mean, somebody like Spieth, his short game, just as good as anybody else's on the PGA Tour right now, will really come in handy.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, if it's going to be windy conditions, playing long, you're not hitting a ton of greens, you're going to have to rely on that short game. And Jordan Spieth, one of the best in the world.
Now, Marty, you already mentioned Gary Woodland. Is there anybody else you like coming in this weekend to win?
Yeah, Rory McIlroy, especially with him kind of in the dumpster and then all of a sudden coming out with a win recently as well. He's just the guy that has another level. If he's playing to the top of his game. He just leaves everybody else in the dust. And I don't see many players like that in the field with the other gear. So Rory McIlroy for sure.
And of course, Rory brings in that finesse, but he's also a long bomb hitter. So great pick there. Marty, I'm going to have to go with Cameron Smith for myself. I mean, he's been right there for a handful of majors as of late. Plus, from 10 to 30 yards off the green, he's one of the best top 10 on the PGA Tour. So it's hard to argue with those kind of stats. Marty, thank you very much for taking this time and joining me. It should be an exciting weekend.
Stephanie Dobson is back with us this week. Stephanie is a local lawyer and mediator here in Lloydminster with Hankin Divorce Law and Mediation. Stephanie, we've been talking about all kinds of different aspects of divorce and separation here over the past few months. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do, is just kind of explain the difference. So can you tell me, first of all, what does separation mean?
Yeah, Stacy, I get a lot of questions about what's the difference of if I want to be separated or I want to get divorced. So I really was excited to do this as a topic for today. So as you said, let's start by talking about separation. So separation is very untechnical. It is when two people who are either married or living together in a conjugal relationship wish to end their relationship. So there's nothing specific necessarily that needs to be done. There's no court application to be brought or any specific declaration to be made. Having said that, there's often things that need to be negotiated when people want to separate. So things like, and we've been talking about this over the last number of weeks, but dividing up assets and debts, or parenting related issues, or finances like child support and spousal support. So really, separation is very informal.
Now, do you have to be living in two different homes to be considered separated, Stephanie?
Well, for sure, separation can be solidified by the act of physically moving into two homes, but that's not a necessary precursor to considering yourself separated. There's lots of clients that come into my office and they're physically living in one home, but they say that, from 6 months ago, we consider ourselves to have been separated. And so if two people are wanting to proceed with an actual divorce, which we'll talk about that in a moment, you have to consider yourself separated for 1 year under what we call the no-fault provisions of the Divorce Act. So in order to prove that, there's a long list of factors, and I'll just name a few just to give our viewers some examples. So for example, separating out your bedroom, whether you socialize or don't socialize together as a couple, whether you're open with your family, friends, even your children about your marital status, parenting separately, and even sexual relations or the absence of sexual relations is a factor in considering whether you're separated or not. So we don't necessarily just look at one factor. It's a whole host of factors that put together, we can consider whether you're together or separated even under one roof.
Well, let's talk about the divorce part now then, Stephanie. So how is that distinguished from separation?
So divorce, I call it the big D divorce. So that is the legal act of no longer being wed spouses, so married spouses. So there's 3 steps. I'll break it down. Of course, it's very complex, but I'll break it down for our viewers today into 3 basic steps to finalizing that act of no longer being legally spouses. So the first step is opening up that court file. So that's filing your initial claim to tell the court, please open a file for me. We want to get divorced, or I want to be divorced. The second step is then actually filing your final paperwork with respect to your divorce. So in between those 2 steps, there's all of these negotiations that we've talked about relating to your separation. So those division of finances, etc. And so the actual act of finalizing that divorce, you don't have to go to court to sign, you sign the paperwork ahead of time. You don't actually have to go to court. We do what's called a desk divorce. So once you've had that 1 year of separation, then you can proceed to ask the court to please issue me a divorce that ends our marital ends our marriage. That third step is then the divorce certificate. And so that's issued 31 days after that judgment. And that is what allows you to do all sorts of things. For example, remarry or consider yourself for sure divorced. That ends that appeal period. So it's a bit complex, but there's 3 basic steps to that.
Well, and because it is so complex, Stephanie, how do you know if you want to get separated or divorced? What are some of the things that you should be considering?
Well, separation, once you consider yourself separated, there are things that you need to work out. And we talked about that a moment ago. And so whenever I meet with clients, I always tell them, let's just focus first on the separation. Let's not necessarily worry about filing those court papers unless there's a reason to. And of course, like everything else, it's complex. So for the most part, we just focus on the separation related issues. In order to grant a divorce, the court is going to need to know about the things that you've decided on. For example, what are you going to do with the kids? What are you doing with your finances? So the court does need to know that. And so we can't necessarily proceed with a divorce without all of that information anyway.
Well, Stephanie, because there is so much involved, obviously it's a good idea to go to a professional. So if somebody wants to find out more about this or has questions, what's the best way to reach you and your team?
Sure. So anyone can call our office at 780-875-2234 or visit us on our website, Henka Divorce, HENKA, divorce.ca. And there's a web contact form. You can contact us that way or find out lots more information on all of this, including all of the history of all of our videos.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for speaking with us. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks.
I am so happy to be joined here today on Primetime Local News by a very familiar face to people in Lloydminster and across Canada because of what she has accomplished in her broadcasting career. Claire Hanna is joining us from Latvia today. Claire, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Claire, we're going to talk about what you've done since you've left Lloydminster. You are based out of Regina now, but for the next few weeks, you are working for TSN in Latvia at the Men's World Hockey Championships. Tell me about that, how that came about, and what you're doing there.
Well, I got a very surprised phone call from one of the VPs of TSN saying they had a gig that I might be interested in. And it was just before the CFL draft that they got in touch with me. So I sort of thought it might be, hosting something for that, maybe just giving them a pack. So when they asked me if I'd be interested in being a reporter in Latvia for the Men's World Hockey Championships, it was definitely from left field. I instantly knew I was going to be interested without even thinking of the COVID protocols and the travel. None of that changed my decision, but there was a lot to soak in and realize, okay, foreign country, players whose in a lot of cases their language, English might be second, third, fourth language, but without hesitation, I was interested.
And what was the process like? You mentioned the international travel and all these different restrictions we have to deal with now. Is it more strict after arriving in Latvia, or are things a little bit looser when it comes to restrictions over there?
Well, first of all, getting on a plane was so exciting, just traveling and showing my passport, something I didn't think would happen maybe for years. Travel was fairly strict. Everybody was wearing masks on the planes. I actually took a charter from Newark to Latvia, directly to Riga, with the NHL players who had been released or finished playoffs with their teams here. That was just a once in a lifetime experience. And it's not like we mingled with the players on the flight, but it was pretty cool to be I was sitting across from Ollie Mata, who's with the LA Kings, and behind me was Adrian Kempe, who's also with the Kings, things like that. That was pretty neat. But here in Latvia, we're in a bubble, and speaking with people, I thought it would be more open here, Stacy, but it is so similar to Canada. No in-restaurant dining. Patios apparently are just opening up next week, but they're still not open now. So very similar to Canada. It's not like even if I was allowed out of the bubble, I'd be able to have a really touristy experience.
And when you are covering the games, Claire, for TSN, what is your role over there in Latvia?
I'm going to be doing interviews with coaches and possibly players before the game, teeing up the game with the players and coaches, just getting a sense for how excited they are. A lot of people are making their very first World Championship appearances. We're not sure right now if I'm going to be doing intermission interviews because the protocol figure out, even though I'm included in a way in a bubble with the players, but there still has to be that separation. And I'm going to be doing a post-game interview with the players, but that one's on the ice. So it's funny, just like everything in this pandemic, we're pivoting, we're told to be flexible, things are adjusting and adapting a lot on the fly. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of interviews with players and coaches.
Now, Claire, as if that isn't exciting enough, you still have another big event coming up that you've been asked to do. You were, for those of you who don't know, a professional volleyball player, and that has taken you to now, not your first time, but within the next Olympics, you're going to get to do some commentating on beach volleyball. So tell me about that.
And Stacey, you probably remember, even when I worked at what was Newcap in Lloydminster, I always tried to fit in a lot of volleyball stories. I'm going to be doing play-by-play commentary for CBC during the Olympics. And I'm going to be covering beach volleyball. Mostly, I represented Canada for indoor volleyball, but not for beach, but I played a lot of beach growing up. So I'm so excited to bring Canadians, honestly, some stories. Mission in Canada. Most people are surprised when I tell them that we have the best women's beach volleyball team in the world. Sarah Pavin and Melissa Humaniparadis are ranked #1 in the world. They won the World Championships in 2019. Everybody thinks Brazil, Team USA. Nope, Canada, we are on top right now. Yes, the Brazilians and the Americans are great too. But so I'm really excited to just shine a light on how incredible our athletes are.
And now for that, Claire, as well, do you know yet how it's going to work? Because it is a little ways away yet, but will there be a bubble, or is that something that you can do virtually from working in Regina, or how is that going to work for you?
Great question. Obviously, I was hoping to get to go to Tokyo, but I will be calling the games in Toronto. They've got a whole bunch of, in a way, sound booths and edit suites, and Mark's a 3-time beach Olympian. He won a bronze medal in 96. Admiring Mark. So excited to work with him. But we're going to be in a booth in Toronto. And there's so many protocols there because you don't know what restrictions are going to be added by that time. So a variety of plans, I think, for Toronto, but we'll be calling it there.
Well, Claire, thank you so much for joining us today. You have done such great things with your career, and I'm just so excited to watch you on TSN with the Men's World Hockey and then also with the Olympics. So good luck with everything, and thank you so much for speaking with us, Claire. It's just so exciting to keep up with what you're doing.
Thank you, Stacey. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving me my very first job in this industry. I owe you a lot, so thank you.
Well, it was all you, Claire. Clearly the talent has taken you far. So I don't know where you go from here. You've done so many great things. So we'll keep watching you, and it's always just a pleasure to chat with you as well.
All right, taking a look here at your next 7 days. We are going to continue to be a little cooler over the next couple of days, including tomorrow with that high of 6 and that low of -7. We're going to see some negative temperatures over those course heading into Saturday, at least with that -5 low on Saturday, where we should see some clearer skies and starting to warm up a little bit. We're not going to be as bad as areas like Saskatoon and south of Calgary and Lethbridge, Medicine Hat. We could see some snow starting on Thursday and Friday. So for us, we'll get to some rain potentially on Monday with an over 60% chance of some showers, as we are going to see increased cloud coverage once again, but we are going to gradually get a little bit warmer compared to today and tomorrow. 19 on that Sunday, 13 on Monday. Looking ahead to Tuesday with that high of 16, and then 15 degrees on Wednesday as well. We could start to see the rain actually on the Sunday, as we are going to get as we are over 30% for a chance of some showers of that happening. So it is going to be a little bit warmer for this weekend, but with no snow, a little bit of rain possibly on the Monday.
Thank you for joining us on Primetime Local News. Have a great rest of your night.